Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me, my books, and blogs on dismantlingfamilycourtcorruption.com, as well as on Amazon. And the books are also on audio as well. Now, I've got a brand new guest on. I've got Jonathan and Samantha McKnight on. Okay. Jonathan is a U.S. Navy veteran who served 8 years aboard submarines. Samantha is a South African immigrant. Together, they are raising three wonderful children and building their creative business, SilverCo Designs, where they specialize in brand identity. However, in September of 2024, their family faced an unexpected life-changing event. Their 5-year-old daughter was removed from their care without a warrant, without emergency circumstances, and without any due process that every family is entitled to. The removal was based on coercion and rushed and questionable medical report involving coordination between DSS, hospital staff, and local law enforcement. Now, almost 2 months later, they were arrested without ever being questioned on charges that stemmed from incomplete information and procedural missteps. The arrest was an act of retaliation for filing an appeal to challenge the DSS Level-1 finding of abuse and neglect. Since then, they've been navigating the legal system that has made reunification unnecessarily difficult. Despite their cooperation and a home where two of their children, ages 10 and 1, continue to thrive. Now, throughout this journey, they've chosen to be advocates, not just for their family, but for others going through similar experiences. They're also working with parents and professionals to create a supportive network for families seeking reunification and clarity in a system that feels overwhelming. And I welcome you, Jonathan and Samantha. I'm so glad you are speaking out on your case. And where are you at now with everything?
So currently, we're kind of like trying to work a little bit with the state to try to get our daughter back. Yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Yeah, just so I can was removed September 4th of 2024. We weren't at home when DSS came to the home. We were out walking with our two other children, and they literally like walked around the neighborhood to find us. And they said that and she had a scratch behind her ears and a bruise on the side of her face. And when she was asked about it, initially she said she could not talk about it. And then they said after at one point she mentioned that dad had thrown her into her room because she couldn't find socks and underwear. So when DSS came, we were a little hesitant to speak to them. Um, and they had a sheriff with them, a couple sheriffs. Um, and they basically threatened. They told us about this she said at school, and if we didn't pick her up from school and take her to the hospital, that they would bring back a warrant to remove all three children. So at that point, we panicked and we got everybody in the car. We picked her up from school and drove her to the hospital. Um, and yeah, we got to the hospital. He was with her in the medical room, and I was with the other two children. And I don't know if you want to just touch on your experience in the room with her.
Yeah, so while I was in the room, in the medical room with my daughter, they pretty much segregated me and my wife. Like they had her in one room and they had me in another. And I
Mhm.
kept asking, where's my wife? Why aren't we in the same room together? Why can't I go over there where she is? And so while I was in the room with my daughter, they pretty much came in there and they had two sets of cameras. I guess the hospital had their set of cameras, and the forensic nurse, I guess she had her own camera. And so they must have taken hundreds of pictures. And the entire time while, they were taking the photos, I continued to say, I don't consent. I don't consent to these photos being taken. You don't have my permission. And I just kept saying it, repeating it over and over. In fact, when I don't know if you told them, but when I walked into the hospital, I told them that I was there, under duress,
Mm.
directly to the hospital staff. Um, so anyway, while they were taking the photos, the forensic nurse basically tried to like speak to me. I think she knew that what she was doing was illegal,
Mhm.
and she said to me, my husband is a veteran as well. Everything's going to be okay, and basically tried to get me to agree to everything that they were doing. So after they got done taking the photos, they pretty much asked, what were the reasons for, some of the, minor scratches and bruises that my daughter had on her. And so I explained, I told them that we're a very active family. They had taken pictures of all three of our kids, and so you would have seen, that
Similar.
they all
Mhm.
they all have scratches. They've all got, some bruises. And so I explained to her that we have several animals within the home. We had about five, six different animals within our home. We're an active family. We go hiking. We do karate together. And so she had just decided that that wasn't good enough. And so at that point, they had just deemed everything that they had found, but only on the one child, to be non-accidental. And while she was at the emergency room, she never saw a physician. She never saw any medical doctor. She never got any X-rays. All they did was take pictures. That's it. They just took photos, and they took her. And so after they took her, the ER physician, she walks in and she's basically like, "Hey, I'm just getting here, trying to figure out what's going on." And so we're asking her, did you have the opportunity to see my daughter, before they took her? Because they're claiming, that she's
Abused.
yeah, abused and neglected, right?
And they had to have a medical emergency, right?
Yep.
Because that's why we had to pick her up from school and take her to the hospital. They're claiming a medical emergency. So when DSS came to us and they gave us a service plan. They said we needed to have somebody in the home for 24 hours or 72 hours, or
Yeah.
don't have anybody nearby. All our family lives out of state, and the ones that are nearby have their own jobs, homes, so nobody that could just come and watch her for that time. We didn't have friends or anybody that could take her either. And so at that point, they said that she was in DSS custody and they were removing her. So they just took her from the hospital
Hmm.
and the doctor did not get to see her. And so the doctor said to us, this is the first time that this has happened where DSS removes a child and the doctor doesn't get to examine them. And
Well,
so
doesn't that hold the hospital at liability in some way?
Absolutely. Yes, and we actually recorded. We had my wife had her phone, on record, and we got her recorded saying that. As soon as the physician walked in, she said to us, this is the first time I haven't been able to examine a child.
And so basically, after that, the other two children got seen. We got their medical records. The hospital is withholding the 5-year-old her medical records. They will not release it. We've sent FOIA requests. We've sent letters to sue. We've actually had them in our federal lawsuit. And which we later, withdrew because we didn't want to step on DSS's toes because they kept retaliating. Every
Mhm.
time we questioned or we asked a question about the process, or my husband had some issues with their privacy, their lack of the Privacy Act. And so when we were asking these procedural questions, we were getting reports that This is after her removal, that she was stabbed. She was put
Yeah.
in a hot bath and scrubbed really hard, and she was hit with a red thing. We don't have any of these items, that they were talking about. What did they say? A paddle. I don't even know, what type of paddle would be talking about.
Hmm.
Yeah, so like the allegations of the stabbing, my daughter, she has like a birthmark that runs kind of like around her neck all the way on the front of her chest. She's had it since she was born.
Hmm.
And so they tried to like use that and say that there was a possible stabbing. And so what's crazy is I think my wife mentioned, I filed an appeal for their level 1 because, a level 1 would be like, hemorrhages,
Hmm.
internal bleeding and
Broken.
broken bones. And so obviously, I'm going to challenge that. And so a couple of days after, we had filed that, they had, I think she mentioned they had basically, um,
Arrested us.
yeah, arrested us and thrown us in jail,
Yeah.
um, which was just crazy, because we don't have anyone here. It's just us.
Hmm.
And so when they arrested us that morning, so 2 days before that, we had emailed the director of DSS saying, we're challenging, like formally challenging this level 1 finding. And that morning, like before DSS hours even, open, she had emailed back saying that she would respond to our challenge at the end of the day. When
Mhm.
I got to the jail and I was looking at my phone to get numbers, I looked at her email and she said, basically now that we're in jail, that they cannot give us any of the discovery because of this Virginia law, that once there's a criminal case, they stay the appeal.
Yeah, so I think it's called the Government Relief Information Relief Act or something like that. It bars like people from getting information. Now, this is a complete violation of due process, but
Definitely.
it bars people from getting information about their case because there's an investigation going on. And so after I was in jail, what's crazy is DSS sent a letter to our house dismissing the allegation of a stabbing right after. And so my question was, what if they used that allegation to put us in the jail, you know?
Hmm.
Yeah, so until this point, we're not getting any discovery. The sheriff's department's not giving us any body cam footage. Um, the hospital won't give us any medical records. DSS won't give us any internal like notes or files or, communication between like the Commonwealth or anything like that. So we're basically like in this gray area every time we go to court. For the criminal case, it just gets pushed back, it gets pushed back, it gets pushed back. And now I'm still through my immigration process, and that's now interfering with that because now there's a pending criminal case. And immigration doesn't take lightly to, people that have those sort of records. And so we've just been trying to work with them. We've done their service plan. We have some more services coming up this week and next month. And she's already supposed to be coming home and having overnight visits and stuff like that, but DSS won't let her come. We also asked the court to have her come in to testify, the 5-year-old,
Hmm.
and they said that she was not competent, but she was competent enough for you to remove her.
Hmm.
So when it was time for the appeal at the beginning of May, the guardian ad litem got sick and could not make it. She was in
Mhm.
hospital for a week. The forensic nurse, who is not a forensic nurse, she has no qualifications. She's just a registered nurse. She moved to Alabama,
Yeah.
so she's out of jurisdiction. Um, we had filed complaints with the hospital, with the boss, the Virginia nurse, what is it called? Board of Nursing.
Yes.
Hmm. Hmm.
A nurse.
And they're actually investigating her because of this. And it makes no sense why the public defenders or the Commonwealth attorney is not seeing that, okay, not the whole DSS case is crumbling. and just dismiss it, but they keep putting us through the ringer. We have to keep going to court, and nothing gets done. So
Yeah, so I just wanted to expound a little bit on some of that as well. So I guess kind of like now where we are with all of this is, you know, when we first started, we really, I want to say we fought it quite a bit. There was a lot of things that DSS as an agency, you know, they were really violating, you know.
Hmm.
Just as an example, one of the things they asked us for was like, you know, our socials, a lot of private information, you know, bank records. I mean, you know, they want to know like the ins and outs of your home, you know. And so I think, you know, a lot of us, you know, we try to live very private lives. We don't want people to like look into our finances and things like that.
right.
And so me, especially as a veteran, that was something very difficult for me to just like allow them to have, you know? And so, um, looking at, you know, we've kind of been in litigation as pro se litigants, I guess, for I want to say probably the past 4 years, you know. We've been in the family court system and now dealing with DSS. And so you know, it's been a real time. You know, these people really don't care. I don't even think they follow their own laws, you
Mm-mm.
know. We've shown them, you know, we've written affidavits, motions, and literally shown them extrinsic fraud, or I think it's extrinsic fraud where there's fraud within the court. We've gone into court and told them, you know, that this is fraud and this should all be thrown out because of this, you know, and just waited to see how, you know, they would respond. And the judge, she would literally say, "Oh, it's, you know, it's a typo,"
Yeah, we were
you
telling them
know?
because they said that the child had seen a pediatrician the day she was removed. Mind you, they removed her around like 4:30, and that's now after the operating hours. So they said that she was taken to the pediatrician, so we contacted the pediatrician because our other two children still go there. And they were like, she was not seen, and she was last seen when we had taken her uh,
Hmm.
for a checkup. And so when we brought it up in court to the judge, she was like, oh, that was a typo. It's a whole two sentences. How is that a typo? It said that she was taken to the pediatrician who confirmed that she was in good health, aside from I can't remember the word she used, but she said like she made it seem like there was a ton of bruises and scratches on the child's entire body. And the child didn't even leave the hospital with a band-aid. She was fine. She was not malnourished, no internal bleeding, no broken bones,
Oh,
no nothing.
Yep.
She was talking, she was walking, she was fine.
what trauma done to that child, removing her from you?
Even so, what caused all of this was the kid's mom had passed away right after I had given birth to my baby in January. And so during their divorce, it was a lot of parent alienation. I was, you know, with the child especially. And she was going and saying, I guess she was missing mom, and we weren't active as much because she was starting to go to school. And she was just, you know, hurting because she missed mom
Mhm.
and was just talking to the teachers and making up these stories. And they took it and ran with it and didn't even reach out to us to see, you know, what was going on. We had scheduled a meeting with them to talk about the behavioral concerns because her behavior was like really digressing, like getting so bad to the point, like, I don't know, I don't want to give too many details of what it was, but she's now in therapy and she's receiving like extensive in-home therapy as well as like outpatient therapy once a week because of this. Um, so a lot of trauma, and I feel like they just took advantage of her vulnerability. And if they could coerce us, you know, to going to the hospital, we weren't there when she was at school being questioned. We later got the police report from the sheriff, which said we were under duress, which they've been denying. They said that we were threatened to take the kids to the hospital, and the court will not accept it.
Well, these family courts are actually illegitimate courts that don't follow the Constitution.
Yep, they don't. They call it follow administrative procedures, if you
Right.
want to call them guidelines.
And they make it up as they go along.
Yep,
I've been there.
absolutely.
And we've noticed it's not just with us. I mean, we've been dealing with this for almost a year now. We've reached out to multiple people, families across America. Medical kidnapping is a thing. It's serious. I mean, there's people in every state dealing with this. People have shared their stories that are far worse than you could ever imagine, and no one's doing anything about it.
Yeah, so this is a lot of people don't know this, but this is a worldwide thing that's actually going on. Because when me and my wife, we met, I think, her being from South Africa, she, dealt with a similar agency over there. Um, and so, these agencies are basically coming in and they're destroying homes, and they're doing it under the guise of something that's less than an emergency or less than extingent circumstances. So I too was also taken by CPS at the age of 5, and so for a lot of families, it's become like I don't want to say like a generational thing, but they go after
It
family.
is.
Yeah, they go after families that are that they deem to be needy. Because just a bit of context. So I was in a previous relationship before I got with my wife, and it was a very toxic environment. And so after that all ended, it was very difficult for the two kids to come into our home and kind of like adjust,
Mhm.
Um, and so a lot of people are kind of dealing with this, and I guess having had the same thing happen to me and it's kind of happening again, the two kids started receiving Social Security benefits, from their mother that passed away. And
Mhm.
so DSS, they target, families that are receiving any kind of benefits, whether it's TANF.
TANF, because
Yep,
they ask you if
yep,
you're on any sort of Medicaid or Medicare. They ask you if you're getting any food stamps or TANF,
yep.
and they just assumed, that we were indigent before we even went to court. They determined that she was abused and neglected before we even got to court, and that is a
Yep.
clear due process violation.
Yeah, so if you look at the emergency removal order, which was the first. God, man, I'm trying to. So, like, they took her. I think it was like on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, on
Tuesday.
a Thursday, and we never got anything. Like, we we never heard anything for 5 days. We didn't know what
Wait,
happened to our daughter. It was crazy. It was like she was literally abducted.
Oh,
These people came and they just took her. And so then we get a notice on the door. And
the day before we had to go to
the
court.
day before we have to go to court, and in the notice, they've already assumed us to be indigent, right? Because our kids are receiving Social Security, and they have given us attorneys already. And so we obviously called the court and called the attorneys and told them that we don't want them to represent us.
mhm.
But what's crazy is, now, where we are is my wife recently went to court and she asked, the judge, hey, I'm curious, what would it take, if I decided I wanted an attorney? And they wanted her to fill out a financial affidavit.
Which I had no
Now,
problem doing.
it's a
But
year later.
they keeping us separate, right? In the court there. He is his own person and I'm my own person, right? But when I went in there and I asked if I could get an attorney, they said yes, but they need his financial records as
As
well.
well. Yeah, but I don't need an attorney. I don't want one.
How does that make sense?
No, well, you know what? It's double dipping. First of all, they're going after the Social Security monies,
Oh, yes.
and this child is now in foster care.
Yes, she's in kinship care right now, so she's
Uh,
with family.
Yeah.
oh,
Thank
okay.
But she was in foster care for a month and a half before somebody from our family could take her.
Right.
Yep. And
Yes.
then
Yep.
now they're trying to put him on child support.
Yes. So the thing is, they're getting here. So after they took her, right, I got a letter from Social Security telling me that DSS was now receiving her payments. And so not only are they receiving survivors benefits, they're receiving Title 4E, which is foster care, and now they're trying to go after me for Title 4D, which is child
Child support.
support. You see? And it's crazy,
Oh,
you
I've
know?
heard this pattern. This is such a, I'm glad you're on speaking about this because this is a pattern. They do it this way.
They do,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes. And so I just want to say this too, when they, initially took all three of us, forced us all to go to the hospital, remember they had two cameras and they took pictures of all three children, but we never saw the pictures of the other two.
We
We
asked if
never saw them.
it belongs to the forensic department at the hospital, and we said, but it's like evidence that's going to help us because
Yep.
Eli is very active as, the 5-year-old, and they have similar scars, bruising, from the activity. We go on hikes, we go to the beach, we're
Mhm.
outside all the time. These are common injuries.
Right.
And they will not show any of his pictures, any of the baby's pictures. Who the baby also has a birthmark at the back of her neck that runs all the way down to the bottom of her back.
Mm-hmm.
So very similar to the 5-year-old who's is like on her neck and like all the way down to her chest.
Mm-hmm.
And like right at the very end of her birthmark, she has like a very small like a blemish,
Mm-hmm.
and that they were saying was the stab wound. It's so minuscule, you can't even see, you don't even know that it's there if you look at her.
Mm-hmm.
And that I think we can positively say is what got us in jail. And then right after that, they send us a letter saying that it was unfounded, the medical neglect was
Yeah, they just threw it
unfounded,
out.
we apparently she had no food, that was unfounded. So the only thing they're holding on to is the pictures and the forensic nurse's testimony to say that she is abused and neglected. But that's being questioned now because she's not even a forensic nurse. And she didn't see a doctor.
This is so sinister because this can happen to anyone.
Yes, it can.
I wish you had a good civil rights attorney.
Right.
Yes, yeah, we looked for one for some time, and we actually went into the federal court system, in the district court, and we came to realize through our filings that the federal court system was actually helping the lower court. They were misapplying case law, trying to use, like the Rooker-Feldman doctrine and other doctrines, basically deter us from filing,
Yeah, to say that we weren't, or they couldn't have jurisdiction.
Yep.
So the Rooker-Feldman doctrine, we had to lose in the civil case first before
Hmm.
they could apply
Yeah, you're
it.
supposed to be a state court loser.
We have
And
not.
we have it.
For them to be applying it, when we take it to the federal court, it's like, again, due process.
Yes. Yes, and there's several other things, regarding like not just the Rooker-Feldman doctrine, but other like the extension doctrine. But a lot of people may not realize that these things don't apply to them, and you might have a federal court judge telling you that it does apply, and so these people are all working together. This thing, it runs very deep. I tell people that this is a train that has been going for a very long time. It is a beast, and they have set it up, to where it is almost, I mean, it's foolproof. It's meant to wear you down, you know?
And that's what they want. And they probably also, did they bring up you two divorcing at all?
Not yet, but I've heard that it's a
Yes,
crime.
we've heard that. Yeah,
And
that's
one of the other patterns is when you assert your rights and you make civil rights accusations against them, they claim that you have mental health illness.
yep. And they try and label you as like a sovereign, I guess. I tell people I don't know what that is, I'm not a sovereign. I'm a veteran. I'm a father, I'm a
Mhm.
man. But
Yeah.
At, it- they are constantly double dipping now with the Social Security money and then forcing you to pay child support to the relative she's staying with.
no, actually, to the agency,
Okay,
they,
They,
that's not that's double dipping. That's
yeah,
really bad.
I've even told the relative, right, that, she should be entitled to the Social Security. You know what I mean? Because she's looking after her. And she, I mean, she just hasn't looked into it,
yeah, we don't
So,
think she's getting fully refunded for any of the expenses that she has for, keeping the child in our home. DSS as an agency is supposed to reimburse her because she has a budget, a monthly budget
Mhm.
for clothing and, any necessities that she may require. But, the family member takes on that expense by themselves and they don't get any compensation from DSS.
Mhm. Right. And that Social Security money should be going there. And this greed, I know it's $1 billion a year business, right?
correct.
But they should not even be pulling that. If anything, they should be worried that you're really going to sue them.
Well, I mean, we did when we went to the federal court, of course, but once we realized that the federal system was not really trying to help us, we decided to dismiss it and to focus more on, dealing with these people.
Civil case because,
Yes, yeah,
we've got the DSS case, the state court, and then we have the criminal court, and then, adding a third court to a federal lawsuit was just a losing battle for us right now because anything we tried to do was just it wasn't going to help us. They would just take whatever they heard, whatever they said, and they use it against you.
yep.
So it was better to just try and cooperate with them. I mean, a lot of the requirements that they've asked us for on the service plan, we submitted like financial statements, criminal background checks, um, I mean, you name it, we've done it. We've given them bills to show that our rent was paid every single month. We weren't late. Our bills were paid. The kids had groceries and clothes and all of it. And they said until like right before we went to court a couple weeks ago, they were like, you guys are not complying, you're not complying, you're not complying, all because he did not want to give them his
I, s-
background check with the unredacted social security number.
yep, my social.
I don't blame
So
you.
Yeah, so I just want to say, in case most people don't know this, and I speak about this a lot because having, served in the military, I was part of the federal court system, or I'm sorry, I was part of the federal, system. And so the Privacy Act of 1974 is supposed to apply to, federal, local, state, and government agencies. And it literally says that if they request you to give your social, they're supposed to tell you whether it's voluntary or mandatory and what uses they're going to make of it. And if they don't provide you that disclosure, literally, then they're not supposed to be asking for it, And so I had a lot of issues, getting kind of past that with them, And I realize, I think for a lot of people, it's really easy to just give that up because, they think to themselves, it's my child, I'll do anything for my child,
They're
Um,
scared.
Yes,
yeah.
I understand. At the same time, these laws and these things are supposed to be in place, like to protect us.
Mhm.
One of the main two, which I don't even believe that the federal court system upholds at all, but it's 18 USC 241 and 242. And those are supposed to protect people from these actors acting under color of law. But it's not enforced at all.
Yeah.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
It's not at all. I just wanted to mention one more thing about the guardian ad litem, because I don't think we've touched on that at all. She was the one that said that the child was not competent, and she came to court instead of the child when we had, sent a, what do you call a petition to bring someone into court?
It's a
Oh
petition.
yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, she was instead of the child coming, she came in place of her, and she basically said that the child was not competent and that she had strong feelings about people. Didn't say who, and that was all for the judge to accept. No competency hearing, nothing. And when it was time for the appeal, I told you everybody got sick, they couldn't come. And a couple weeks after that, we get an email from the guardian ad litem basically asking him to give up his parental rights to the kinship caretakers and that the child would have a protection order against him until she turned 18 in order for DSS to get out of the picture and to stop the appeal.
Yes, imagine getting an email you know what I mean? That's crazy to give up your daughter and have a restraining order till she's 18, an email.
And I don't know if you know the guardian's procedure, but she's supposed to conduct her own investigation, speak to the child, and then speak to both of us individually. None of that occurred before she said that we weren't complying with DSS and we're not meeting the service plan requirements. Therefore, she thinks it's best that he gives up his rights and DSS gets out of the picture.
Yes. Yes, and so with that being said, going back to this guardian, so I recently went back for a hearing to reschedule my appeal. I filed it on November 7th, I believe. And it's been almost a year now. I haven't had this appeal. And so I went to a rescheduling, okay? And at the rescheduling, the guardian ad litem did not show up. And keep in mind,
She was there the day
she was
before
there the day
at the
before. We were
JDR
in
court.
court the day before, and she was there. So now my scheduling's here the next day. She doesn't show up, and the CPS attorney is speaking for her, and she's saying it looks like the guardian ad litem doesn't have her schedule open until I think it was October.
Oh, let's drag out the case. So,
Yes.
so this
Yeah.
third party parasite, guardian ad litem, just doesn't show up. In order to drag out the case, what does she have to do with CPS or DSS? I mean, she's got to have a connection in there.
She's supposed to be protecting the child. She's supposed to be in the child's best interest. And had she spoken to the child, she would know that the child's been begging to come back home. She wants to
Hmm.
be home. She misses her siblings. She misses her parents. She wants to be with us.
Yeah.
Nobody will listen. She even went to DSS and she told our caseworker, when can I go back home? And the caseworker told her, well, we're working on it. But they're telling us we're not cooperating with them.
Yes. So one of the problems, I just want to say this with the whole system, it's not just the family courts, but it's the juvenile courts, they have, this basically this closed doors kind of policy where, they can almost do whatever they want, behind those doors. Nothing's recorded. And so once you go up to a higher court, like a circuit court, although it's still corrupt, but at the same time, everything in there is going to be on the record. It's going to be recorded. And so CPS, the guardian ad litem, they don't want to go to that appeal. They know that we're going to ask, some very legitimate questions, basically, in order to expose, a lot of the fraud and the things that they're doing.
And there is so much fraud. There is so much. It just with these people, they go into families with that are fit parents, and they'll remove one child and let you keep the other ones. And these guardian ad litems have got to go.
Yes.
The third party parasite and custody evaluators, whoever else, they all need to. They're useless.
Yes. And prior to all of this, I had a guardian ad litem. This was in family court because we've been dealing with both systems. But the guardian ad litem, she tried to basically charge me, I guess, her fees. And I had basically explained to her that, just a second. Yeah, so the guardian ad litem, she because I told her that I didn't have a contract with her, I explained to her that I didn't need any of her services. And so after the two children, after their mother passed away, she brought me back in court to try to take, to get the money that she felt like I owed her. And so when I went to the court, I'm wondering to myself, who's going to be sitting on the opposing side? Because, there's the mother is gone now.
Mhm.
The guardian sat there and she literally tried to force me to pay her. It's
How
crazy.
much?
It was a few $1,000s, about
Uh-huh.
3,000.
Yes,
Yeah.
because he had to pay his half of the guardian services, and she was trying to get him to take on mom's half of
Yeah.
because she wasn't here.
You
Yeah.
didn't hire her.
Yeah. So it's
Exactly.
it's all about money for them. The current guardian we're dealing with now, I think she's maybe met my daughter once.
Hmm.
And we've only
And
ever seen her in court. She's not spoken to us. She's not reached out. We sent an email in response to her email about giving up, parental rights, and she still has not responded. It's been over a month.
Yeah, there's something really sinister about your case that they would pull this, especially because of the Social Security money.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
And keep in mind they kept the other two children in the home, but they're saying that we're a danger to one.
Yeah.
That whole thing doesn't make sense to me. And the main allegation was that I apparently threw her, and I tell everyone, I'm a 200-pound man, 200 plus pound man, and my daughter, she's 6.
Well, she was
And
five
well,
at the
she
time.
was
She's
5 at the
tiny.
time. She's very small.
Mhm.
If I had thrown her, she would have had a concussion or a hemorrhage
Or a
or,
broken bone
a
or
broken
some
bone.
sort of like severe
Yes.
injury that would
Right.
And
warrant. And mind you, she said that her leg hurt. She told DSS that morning that her leg hurt, and they took her to the hospital and did not get her treated for that pain that she was experiencing from being thrown.
no
Why not?
x-ray, nothing. They literally sat in the room with me and took photos of her and then they took her away. They didn't do any x-rays, nothing.
Well, it has to fit their false narrative.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
Ridiculous. But yeah, we're just at the point now where we're trying to work with them. We're doing everything that we can. We're having in-home services. We have a parent mentor that's supposed to come mentor us, I guess, in the home.
How much is
And
that going to cost? Did you ask?
so we had gotten federal funding approved for it, but apparently it stops after 3 months. And when we went to court, the judge said that it was going to be something that was going to be like continued for a long time. She didn't tell us how long, but so we're basically going to have a FACT meeting every 3 months to get more funding for as long as they try and keep us into this cycle that they have going on. So after every 3 months, we'll have a FAP meeting, the federal funding will come through, and they'll just drag along these services.
Okay, so then now that they've got this federal funding, right, and they've got the Social Security monies and your Title 4D, if that doesn't spell out outright um, willful corruption, and your child wants to come home. So
And
that's
it's
not in the best interest. Did the judge ever address the best interest? Best
they
interest?
Yes, they use the best interest for everything, and they don't believe that it's in the best interest for the child to come and testify, and they don't believe that it's in the best interest of the child to see us unless we give them background checks and violence risks assessments and parent mentoring classes and parent classes and all our financials, and it's just not in the child's best interest. She doesn't even know what any of these things are. She
Hmm.
knows that she has a home, she has food, she has siblings, she go to school, she plays We go on trips, we have fun. That's what she knows. That's what our family is. She
Mhm.
doesn't have to worry about bills or food or where anything's coming from. We've always shielded them. We've never had, we've had rough moments, but we've never had a time where we were lacking of food or, power in our home or, you know, so late on rent that we get an eviction notice. It's never happened. We've always, always, always been on our financials, made sure we take care of them. They always get clothes. I get them clothes like every 3 months. As the season changes, I take them shopping. And so we have all of those receipts and we've been showing them. They do not care.
Yeah, they don't care.
Well, this is just terrible. I mean, the guardian ad litem really doesn't care about your child because she's also committing child psychological abuse, which is in the DSM-5, V995.51, by traumatizing the child. Even the judge is aiding and abetting child psychological abuse.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And I tell people too, the judges are acting as an administrator, you know. They're wearing two hats, you know. Either you're going to be a judge or you're going to administrate, CPS's policies, you know.
Right. Yeah,
Um,
I think as a judge you have to be impartial. And we recorded our trial, our initial preliminary hearing because it's not a court of record. So they don't have someone taking transcripts in the court or anything like that. So when we went in, we had recording devices with us. And we recorded the entire hearing. The judge would not let us speak at all. Every time we tried to voice our concerns or respond, she would cut us off. She would try and explain how the court system worked, thinking that we didn't know because we didn't have representation.
yep.
So she just kept going around in circles. I think we would have been there for an hour. She just kept going around in circles about this is how
For a while.
you talk and then you let them talk and then they'll come back and then you cross-examine. Like I was illiterate, you
Yeah,
would
at
think,
one
the way
point she told us, she said this isn't a game of ping pong,
yeah,
the judge. And she would the witnesses when they would like DSS would get on the stand, we would ask a legitimate question, and if the judge didn't want her to answer, she'd say you can jump off the stand.
yeah.
She'd just let her get off the stand. So due process, you can throw that right out the window. They don't care at all.
That is so criminal.
Yes.
So the
Yep.
judge actually wagged her finger at you.
Yes,
It was
absolutely.
very rude the entire time. Like DSS was yelling at us, and I even said that their attorney, I said, "Why are you yelling at me?" And she's like, "Because I'm an attorney." I was like, "Oh,
Yep, that's what
Apparently, a
she.
very bad one.
She is. She's got terrible reviews on Google. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She does not know the law.
No.
And she's there boldly representing DSS and they're just following in her limelight. And she's very ignorant of the law.
Hmm. I had one courtroom I was in where I tried to challenge the jurisdiction and question, where's the contract? Where's the agreement where I agree to this process, And the judge, he had three police officers come into the courtroom just so that I would stop asking questions, you
Yeah.
know?
To
Yep.
intimidate you.
Yes, and even in this hearing that my wife's talking about, dealing with my daughter as well, when we were speaking, we had the bailiff come and stand right by my shoulder, you
Yeah.
know?
And we asked the bailiff at the end, for their badge numbers and names. And because we were arguing due process and privacy, she comes up to him and she says, "You cannot have my name or my badge number because of privacy." And she walked away. She would not give it to us.
Oh, she doesn't know her job either then,
Yes,
too.
that she's a public official, you
Right.
know?
That the taxpayer, unfortunately, is paying that individual that doesn't know their job. Taxpayer doesn't know any of this stuff goes on.
Yep.
It was just a show. DSS, their attorney was getting water from the bailiffs from the back room. They were on their phones. Like it wasn't a trial. It wasn't a hearing. It was just a meeting in this formal setting. but none of the rules were applied. None of the rules were followed.
It
We,
was a kangaroo court,
yeah,
Mhm.
literally. It was, yeah, that's all I can say, you know? They just didn't care, you know? It was like
yeah, and
a show.
we're just tired of it. We want it to be over because they have nothing. We see that. I mean, everybody we've shared our story to sees that it's clear and it's not just us. So,
Mhm.
you know, in a lot of situations, I feel like I look internally and I'm like, okay, is it me? Am I the problem? It's not. It's not just us. It's not just me and him. It's families across America. And like I said, I have families that text me because we try to start a nonprofit with somebody that was on your show as well previously, and that obviously didn't work out. But I have families that have reached out with like cases where their children are being raped on a daily basis by their foster care parents, and
Mhm.
reaching out to DSS and they're begging for help, and they're not helping. They're There's injuries. Like I have a client that sent me pictures of her child that's burnt all over her arms from foster care. It's so bad. They're failing to take her to the hospital to get treatment. They won't
Mhm.
give her back to her mom. She's not allowed to speak to her mom. It's what can you do? How do you help these people? And they're looking at us, like what can we do? And I have no answer for them.
Right. Also, my other question was, were they sending you documents around anniversary dates or birthdays? Can you recall anything like that?
Who?
You, like during your case, like with my case, um the inept CPS worker that was very obese closed the case on my birthday, which was January 11th. Please don't remember that. But it was on a Sunday. What did she do? Go in the office on that day purposely on my birthday to say, okay, we just um, lit a fire in your living room. Now we're leaving. So there's, nothing more about the case.
Happy birthday, I
Right,
guess.
right. It's like, wait a minute, this was on a Sunday that she went in the office on taxpayers' expense.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. Why, when the DSS, what is the director, when she sent that email, it was way before operating hours. So you went to court, you were at that hearing where they issued a
The
KPS for
indictment.
us. And you responding, going into that hearing that you would respond coming out, knowing the outcome that we would get arrested.
Yep.
When the sheriffs came here, they said they had to call DSS to come get the other two children. Thank God, like I panicked and I just called like somebody I worked for, and she came and she picked the kids up and she took them. If she didn't, they would have gone,
They would have gotten
to
all three.
DSS and we probably would not have gotten them back.
This is terrible. Shame on them.
Yeah, it was. When they put us in the jail, I mean, they literally took our family and drug us through the mud. I mean, we are
Or
lucky
We
that we
almost
still
lost
have our
everything.
home. We
They took
almost
our
lost
home,
everything.
they took our animals. We had fish tanks in the basement,
uh,
saltwater fish. We had a turtle. They came in, they trashed our entire basement. They took all the fish, they took the turtle, they took the dog, they took the cat. Our house was a mess. Like, people were just going in and out.
Yeah, it was
I
terrible.
was not here for 8 days. He was not with us for 20,
20, it was
20
20
so you
days.
were in prison for 20 days.
jail,
Yes.
in
Well,
jail.
Same thing basically, but
yeah, it
yes.
is. I mean, because the judge said, I'm going to send you to jail. And when I looked on the building, it said prison.
Yeah, true.
But yes, 20 days.
Oh, you really do have a good civil rights case.
Yeah.
Nobody
Um,
wants to take it. As soon as you say that it's involving CPS, they don't want it.
Yep,
We've
they don't
reached
want to
out.
go.
Trust me, we've reached out to several. We finally got to a place where we were able to afford one, and even like a criminal defense attorney. And when you tell them it's DSS related, they back out. They're like, nope. I would stick with, I called two like really well-known criminal defense attorneys here where we live, and they were like, just stick to your public defenders.
Yep.
I was like, I'm giving you money, take it and
Yeah.
just get me out of it. They were like, just hold on.
Now, I just want to say this too. What's really crazy is the core of this corruption, right? So when people go into like these criminal cases, right, they're to some extent expecting that they're going to get somewhat of a fair trial. But you have these prosecutors that are literally controlling the narrative. They're giving the jury only a piece of the evidence. They're not allowing the jury to see everything. And when you file and you try and ask for everything, with a discovery, they're not going to give it to you. They're going to use a Government Relief Information Act, you
Hmm.
see?
Hmm.
And so the attorneys, the public defenders, they're working with, the prosecutor and with all these other attorneys and the judges. They're all in a club together. And
Yeah.
so they're not going to go in there and advocate for you and ask for discovery. And so when you go, to your trial, the jury, they're only going to see photos, for example.
Yep, that's what they used at the jury trial to indict us. All they had were the pictures and the forensic nurse's testimony. And we didn't have a chance. We weren't at that trial. We didn't even know that that trial was taking place. And the public defenders are like, oh, well, it's Virginia law that doesn't have to have both sides. They can just prosecute you, and they don't need to have like definitive proof of anything. They can have suspicion and that be enough for them to detain you. And so that's basically what they did. And the public defender, because I was saying we need to get this dismissed so it cannot interfere with my criminal case. I mean, with my immigration case, or we have to like make some sort of deal because now it's almost going over on a year. We've not been offered any sort of deal, nothing. And he keeps saying, well, the Commonwealth attorney needs to go and talk to DSS, and DSS will determine if we're compliant or if we're doing whatever we need to do. And the Commonwealth attorney will take that and give us a deal or some sort of like relief in the federal court. But they haven't done that. They keep pushing it over and pushing it over and pushing it over. So we're just in a gray area.
Hmm.
I'm so sorry this is happening to you and your little one. Yeah, this double dipping, all of this is just making the state a bunch of money.
Yeah.
Yep.
Especially in small count like little states like ours and um where we live, it's a very small town. DSS probably has like maybe 80 cases, if that. And they're holding on to whoever they can. They keep hiring people, but they say they don't have enough time because our where our child is right now, she has to be driven back and forth for visits, and it's an hour and a half drive. And because DSS has to do that driving, we're not getting visitation.
Yep.
Oh, this gets worse as we go.
Oh, we could probably go on for days, you
Oh,
know?
so DSS
Study
is
visits.
they're running you around at
Yes.
taxpayers' expense when there's probably some other poor kid that's actually being battered and abused
And
and
needs.
not getting any attention. So they're going after people like you.
Yes. Yep.
Also, another thing to point out when we were in the jail, I don't know, they give you like newspapers and stuff that's current in the jail. And so I saw it first way before he saw it. I'd already gotten out before he found out about it. But there was a story in our local newspaper of a couple charged felony charges, abuse and neglect. They had a dead dog buried in like shallow buried in their front yard. Their home was covered in feces. Like the story was horrid. And
Mhm.
they were released that very next day. We were being held without bond. They were released the very next day and they still got their kids.
Well, maybe they figure they can't get any money out of that one.
It was a very bad case. They had been
It was
investigating these people for, I think, man, maybe a couple years, a few years. And I think in their home, they said it was so bad. I was told this while I was in the jail. They said that this guy's home was so bad that the police had to step out and literally
Breathe.
take breathe. They said there was literally piles of human feces on the floor. The ceiling was falling in. And this man came in the very same jail, like like cell, not the cell, but the community that I was in, and
Hmm.
he left 2 days later. And I was still in there only because I was challenging this system.
Hmm. Oh, that's just terrible. Yeah, I mean, this is happening all the time to
Mhm.
parents.
I mean, we just at the point where we want to do whatever we can to provide as much education
Hmm.
to people, to families, because a lot of people don't look into, their cases. They don't read the paperwork that they're getting from the courts. And in doing that, we found, that because when we initially got all of the paperwork, we are like, oh my God, okay, we just paid attention to the date and we are like, the rest of it is bullshit. And when we went back and we really read the paperwork, that's when we noticed, okay, they said that she saw a pediatrician. The nurse said that she recommended that the child go for a skeletal check, blood work, CT scan, all of that. No medical records were produced. So I really think that you have to look into these things and look into your own case, not ignoring, the paperwork that they give you. Every time we get paperwork from them, it may look like the same document, but they slip something in there. And so we've picked up a lot of stuff in our case.
Hmm.
So just, yeah, we just want to educate people,
Right,
to really look into the stuff that they're receiving from DSS and the court.
right. And don't sign anything because I know when that witch came into my house, she had a blank piece of paper with just my name typed underneath a line. And she says, "You sign this." And it's why? Well, it's to say I've been here. Well, you know what? You, I unfortunately I signed it under duress because this was like all new to me. But you don't know what paper they're attaching that to. I didn't think of, you're just so upset they're there.
Yeah.
Yep, that's true. Yep.
And they pry on people that are scared, that
Hmm.
make quick decisions and when they're panicking, because that's exactly what we did. When she said she
Hmm.
was going to come take the rest of the children, I was like, I'm not letting that happen. Let's go. We'll do what we need to do. I went to the hospital. At the end of it, I signed, the releases for the kids that I had. And he refused to sign any releases at the hospital for the child that they removed. And they still proceeded with all of the medical procedures, the
Mm.
removal, the the evaluation, and he's sitting there saying, I do not consent, I do not consent. But
Hmm.
because DSS, I guess, has higher authority than the child's parents, and they were like, well, you have to do these things, the hospital complied.
But without that physician laying eyes on the child,
Exactly.
Correct. Ever.
Ever.
Yep.
that's,
I don't think she was seen by a physician until the following year, if I'm
mhm.
not mistaken.
Yeah, because yeah, she was removed in 2024. No, I think she saw.
Maybe a couple months
Yeah,
later.
I
It
think
was
a couple
months at
months later,
least.
because she had said over a phone call to us that something was wrong with her leg and she had to go to the hospital to get an x-ray. This was when she was in the foster care system.
Hmm.
They didn't tell us what it was about, what it was for. We
How
assumed
dare they?
exactly. So she's right now. She is with family and the family requests, like, if they can give her a flu shot, like they'll come and ask us for permission. Hey, can we trim her hair? When DSS had them or had her in their custody, they just took her as their own and they, did all of the things that they felt that she needed and ran with it.
Mhm.
Whether we consented to it or him, he's her dad. We have a very strict diet, the things that we consume.
Mhm.
We're working very hard on like, being healthier versions of ourselves, and we
Mhm.
want that for our kids. And, as soon as she got to the hospital, they're giving her sugar, and
Mhm.
she has a problem, with processed foods. One, it makes her ill. She gets Her stomach gets distended, and she has like diarrhea issues or constipation. So we really, really try and watch what we feed them. And that was one of her issues, was she didn't want any of the food that we were cooking at home because it was more on the healthier side. And
Mhm.
she was so used to be given like junk food and hot dogs and pizza.
Because that's easier.
Yeah. And she was just not happy, with the adjustment that had to be made living in our home. And that was a lot of what caused her to, go to school and make these statements.
What a shame. What a shame. So you do get to see her or not at all? You don't,
Right
do you?
now, we have not seen her in about, I would say,
Couple of weeks,
no, we've
maybe
not seen her in a long
2 weeks.
time.
No, it hasn't been that long.
Seen
It,
her like in person visitation.
oh, I'd say it's maybe a few weeks.
Mm. Even still, they don't care about these kids. I mean, they don't care about their, ACEs score, adverse childhood experience score. I don't know if you're aware of those, but you can even Google that and even pull up the test. And I think it's like 14 questions, and the kid will answer, like, have you ever had a parent incarcerated? That increases the ACE score. And with a high ACE score, like all mine have high ACEs scores. And what it does is it will actually shorten the child's or adult child's life at
Oh
some point.
wow.
So these judges, they know all this stuff. They just don't care because of the money flow.
Mm,
Absolutely.
that's
It's,
terrible.
it's a shame. No
Right.
one's helping these kids that actually need help.
Right. Exactly. How can people reach you if they have any questions?
I can give you my email address. We also have a podcast, but we haven't really been posting on there
Hmm.
just because we're trying to avoid like any sort of retaliation from DSS. But our email is storiesforchangepodcast@gmail.com.
Okay. And I'll put that in the podcast notes. And is there anything else you'd like to add?
That's it from me.
I just have one thing.
Uh-huh.
I just like to, I guess, offer this as like a just something that people should look into,
Hmm.
that can possibly just kind of like help or secure their families, from things like this. But it's called suretyship, and it has to deal with your estate, and and kind of taking control of your estate.
Hmm.
Um, One of the reasons that, the government kind of like interjects, into a lot of our lives is because we've kind of publicly given them permission to do so,
Hmm.
We think that we're private, but through this process, I think me and my wife have kind of realized that we're not as private as we thought we were.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Your information, by these people, it's being shared, daily, they're essentially making money off of you and your family, But yes, that would just be one thing I would encourage people to look into is suretyship and, like I said, taking control of your estate.
Well, thank you for that advice. And I'm so glad I had you on. Don't jump off, okay?
Okay.
Slam the Gavel's a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these courtrooms. I'm your host, Marianne Petrie. You can find me on Spotify, YouTube. Please like and subscribe, Apple iTunes, iHeartRadio, Google, and other platforms I don't know about. Again, feel free to buy me a coffee to help keep this podcast going. I thank you so much, Jonathan and Samantha McKnight, for speaking out. People need to know this is going on.
Absolutely. Thank you
Yes.
for having us.
Thank you.
Definitely.